Now, countries over the last few years have started to essentially experiment, build, develop, enhance, essentially trying to experiment with the automation of their militaries. This can be seen in the case of weapon systems, of drones, battle tanks, submarine systems. Essentially, these are weapon systems which, with the help of AI systems, can be used without human intervention. Ms. Nakamitsu, the question here is, how has the global UN disarmament agenda evolved, considering the increasing integration of AI in the military domain? There's a lot of similarity there with nuclear technology as well, which is also dual use. How does the UN Disarmament Office Affairs look at regulating AI in the military domain?
Thank you. Well, before answering your question, nuclear and AI, we look at it quite differently. AI is not a weapon. It's enabling and disruptive technologies. Of course, nuclear weapons is nuclear weapons. There is, of course, a concerning sort of a linkage issue of AI into nuclear weapons systems, as I touched on in my remarks. But AI is not really a weapon as such. We just need to think about the application of that technology that is very much dual technology, much bigger than a dual technology, multi-purpose technology compared to the nuclear side. But just going to the UN's process, in 2018, the Secretary General issued first ever his initiative of disarmament agenda. And there he really narrowed in and really focused on the importance of human control over artificial intelligence in any military applications, including, of course, the laws, lethal autonomous weapon systems. So ever since, I have been sending very strong message that, the thought of machines actually killing humans without human intervention is a repugnant one, and it has to be prohibited by international law. And since then, this year, in the summer, in July, the Secretary General issued a new Agenda for Peace policy brief, in which he also referred to a broader AI issues. And in the military domain, he recommended two things. One is that all member states of the UN developed its national strategy for developing, designing, and using AI. And then the second is to start really working on the development of norms and rules through multilateral process, which is, by the way, multi-stakeholder process, he also emphasizes. He established very recently, in October, he set up his high-level advisory body of artificial intelligence. That's for the broader governance of AI. But this body will be making recommendations on the governance models and options for the artificial intelligence. And they are now starting to deliberate on what kind of risks and challenges that are there. So that's also part of the UN's process that touches on the military and security aspect as well.
General Shukla, I just wanted to come to you on this. Essentially, as a country with the largest armed forces in the world, how does India look at possibly having a national plan for AI? And where does AI essentially lie in the scheme of things for the Indian armed forces?
Yeah, so, let me just give you my impression of how I see the AI landscape unfolding, especially in the national security domain. What is the extant reality? So the first point is that, AI and the penumbra of associated technologies like synthetic biology, quantum, robotics, the aggregate wave is so powerful and consequential that it will create a new set of strategic haves and have-nots. It is, going to create a set of new winners and losers in the international system. So the geopolitical national security dimension is indeed very powerful. And the first point that I would like to make here is, there are huge possibilities and there are great perils. But what should not happen in India, in my view, is that we should not let the risk debate, which is very important, there are ways of addressing it, but let it not overwhelm the opportunity one. So the way we shape these debates is extremely consequential. And I'm not undermining the risk dimension. There are very good ways of doing it, but we must not fall prey, and especially when a competitor is somebody like China, whose hallmark is how to leverage technological advantages and economic surpluses very smartly into the currencies of hard power and the military. So it is, it will be extremely unwise to do it. The second is that when it comes to national security, AI has already moved to the heart of strategizing and war fighting and capabilities. Let me look at the PLA. The Strategic Support Force is what? They have created a separate service for digital enablement and AI enablement. A service like an Army, Navy, Air Force. The Americans are, deeply into AI. Effective AI, militarily effective yet responsible. So I make the point that AI is unstoppable in national security. It is very, it is utilitarian, and it is central to deterrence, and also to attain strategic advantage across the continuum of competition, crisis, conflict, and war fighting. Now, the challenge for Indian defense is what? If I may just come to that very briefly, is to integrate AI at speed and scale while ensuring that it is safe, it is efficacious, and there is warfighter trust. So when you talk of warfighter trust, safety is inbuilt into it. It should be effective, and the ethical dimensions of industrial fighting will also apply in digital, in the digital domain. So it is very much possible. Only way you can talk responsible AI is from a position of strength. And therefore, my whole argument is that we must leverage AI because it is a fact of life. Do it smartly, do it responsibly, efficaciously. It can be done.
So this brings me to Professor John Tassiolis. The question essentially is that for any regulation to essentially take place over, I guess, autonomous weapons, you would need to have sufficient human supervision over there. And so the question here arises whether, how do we go about ensuring that the regulation of these systems is also compatible with international humanitarian law as well? Do you believe that the current regime for regulation of military applications of AI is consistent with the humanitarian law regime?
I think that's a very important question, to begin at least with the law. And if we begin with the law, then there are serious questions about whether autonomous weapon systems would be compatible. I mean, the law requires a number of distinctions to be drawn. For example, the distinction between combatants who may be deliberately killed in the context of war and non-combatants who cannot be intentionally killed. They can be killed as a side effect of achieving a military objective. Do you have AI that actually can distinguish between a soldier and a child with a gun, a toy gun? Do we have AI that can make judgments of proportionality, that it can judge correctly that killing a certain number of civilians as a side effect is justified in order to achieve a given military objective? And then there's a further question. Can we apply concepts like intention to AI systems, especially given issues around explainability regarding how they function? So I guess the first thing I'd want to say to you is you're absolutely right to begin with the question, does existing international humanitarian law, can that be complied with by AI? And I'm suggesting there are serious questions. But I think there's a further question. And the further question is this: are we happy to rest only with existing international humanitarian law? And I think we shouldn't be happy with that, because that law has a very peculiar feature to it, which is it enables people to do things that are, in other circumstances, legally permits people to do things that are morally terrible, i.e. it legally permits people to kill others who don't deserve to be killed, who have a right not to be killed. Now, there's a reason it does that. There are very specific reasons it does that, but those reasons apply to humans being in a context of battle. So because someone's in a context of battle, because, for example, there's the fog of war and uncertainty, there's uncertainty about the justness of my cause versus the justice of the opponent's cause, because maybe I've been forced to fight, I had no real choice. For all these reasons that are related to human vulnerability, we allow these special exemptions to exist in the case of war. We say someone in an unjust cause can kill someone in a just cause. We say that innocent civilians can be killed if the military advantage is sufficient. That's a concession to human frailty. That's an assumption that the combatants are humans and share our nature. Now, once you have autonomous weapon systems, that assumption is out of place. An autonomous weapon system doesn't have a right to self-defense in the way that a human being does. It doesn't have the same issues around the fog of war or being overcome by emotion. So though I agree with your initial points that the law is a starting point and there must be compliance with law, we then have to raise the question, yes, but this law was fashioned for a certain kind of warfare. And if states are going to be hell-bent on developing AI, an autonomous weapon system, in order to further their own advantage, then, as with other evils in the past, international law will have to respond to that and potentially change.
So Eric, at this summit, we've actually heard plenty of discussions about the need to, audit systems, explainable AI, increase the reliability of AI systems. What is the recent U.S. Political declaration on the responsible use of military in AI? How does it deal with that? How does it go about enhancing capacity building in the U.S. with respect to that?
Thanks so much, Conrad, and thank you to Carnegie India for the opportunity to come here and talk about the work the United States is doing on developing these systems responsibly. As we've heard throughout this conference, there are risks and opportunities with all of this technology. There are ways to address it through legal means, through non-binding means, through arms control treaties, as we were talking about here. But from the United States perspective, we're coming at this, much like most of the other AI applications are coming at it, is that we need to look at this technology and develop it responsibly. There are ways to develop artificial intelligence for military applications across the whole spectrum, because as the Undersecretary has mentioned, it's not just lethal autonomous weapons systems or the Terminators, as we were talking about earlier today, but it is those questions of decision-making tools. You could consider an autopilot to be an artificial intelligence system. And so what we've created is a system of 10 foundational principles, and I'm disappointed to know that Google has 11, so we're going to have to work on that. But these principles are designed to help countries develop AI and integrate it into their militaries in a responsible manner. So it talks about avoiding bias, avoiding automation bias, about having oversight, about creating those testing environments that ensure that you can effectively, use these capabilities in a way that is consistent with international humanitarian law, consistent with the purpose of the weapons system. And so while we have launched these principles, we launched it just a couple weeks ago on November 13th. 47 states have joined us so far. We had another 50 in the room that seemed very interested in this declaration. Our goal is to bring all of these countries together, all of the countries of the world, because all countries of the world are going to start experimenting with AI, whether it's using these large language models or trying to develop other systems on their own. And let's start exchanging best practices. How do you avoid bias? How do you create an auditable methodology for your weapon system? And so we think this is a great way to get after those norms of responsible behavior that the Undersecretary talked about, that the Secretary General in particular is talking about. And we're hoping that all the countries of the world will help come together so we can exchange these best practices, iterate our principles, right? Our principles are not certainly locked in stone. They are something that is going to have to evolve as we understand this technology, just as we've been talking about all along about civil and commercial applications of AI. That all applies to the military domain, and that's where we're hoping to get a lot of countries to work with us on this.
Thank you. Ambassador Ray, I wanted to follow up with a similar question with respect to the Indian vantage point. What is India doing when it comes to pursuing the responsible use of military in AI? How does India go about doing it? What is India's perception when it comes to establishing global consensus? Is there a consensus there for India to join?
I'll answer the last part first. There is a consensus which an Indian diplomat helped craft and on something called lethal autonomous weapon systems. And the debate on that actually predates the debate on military AI. That debate began with robotics and weapons systems. And then military AI has acquired prominence of late and has acquired a particular salience after the development of large language models, ChatGPT, and so on. There's been a debate which has been going on this for about the last 6, or not a debate, a process underway, a multilateral process, a cohesive multilateral process underway, which has achieved results. You know, technology should not be stigmatized. AI has a lot of uses. Anybody who's attended this event, I mean, I was particularly struck by Mr. Nilekani's presentation about how AI can be used for the development of countries like ours. Similarly, in the military field, AI gives military advantages, and that's why it's being deployed. And the question is that military advantage lawful or not? I mean, what kind of advantages? As the professor here says, it helps what's, you know, in Clausewitzian terms, pierce the fog of war, reduce the friction of battle, help better targeting, improves the quality of decision-making, military decision-making. These are all facts of life. The question is, how do you balance this with the humanitarian imperative? So as I began, when I began, I talked about the process underway in a treaty called the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, which has a group working on lethal autonomous weapon systems, and it's been working on this since 2016. And this group has agreed that the laws of war apply to these to lethal autonomous weapon systems. India has has agreed to take on that obligation, including to their potential development and use. There are other uses or other benefits that this system has produced. Don't forget that when we started discussing these systems, Ambassador Venkat Verma is somewhere in this audience. I think he did my job about a decade ago. There was no lexicon, no terminology, no understanding of how these weapons worked and what was the sort of the legal landscape. As in responsible AI or in the use of AI in the civilian domain, these concepts in the military domain were developed in discussions held over a period of time. And what are we doing as diplomats and as lawyers to take this forward? I would say that we are focused on 3 areas. We accept that international humanitarian law changes with time. There are some principles that are eternal, and the humanitarian imperative is eternal. How you manifest it through the laws of proportionality, distinction, etc. These changes, and we are working on it. These are areas that are difficult in the best of times, and with an evolving technology in a war-like situation, these are more difficult than usual. And I would say that we should not hurry these along. The second is there are norms. There's a norm against the use of biological weapons. There's a norm against the use of chemical weapons. Is there a norm in the case of AI? I think that the fact that we have guiding principles seems to indicate that there is a norm. So these are the 3 or 4 areas in which we are working to develop a framework for use of AI.
So Professor Ben Israel, I wanted to come to you at this point. How important has AI been to Israel's military advantage? Do you see it possibly even complementing the armed forces in the future, sort of maybe taking over, in terms of manned forces? What is the current status when it comes to how Israel views military applications of AI?
Until now, I start with an example. Until now, there were some 10,000 rockets launched in the current round. Almost all of them were intercepted by a weapon system, Israeli weapon system called Iron Dome, which utilized AI. So let me say how. I mean, once a rocket is launched, the time depends on the range. And sometimes the time that you have from launch to impact is only 30 seconds. We don't have enough time for human beings to analyze the situation, decide what to do. We need to take an immediate decision where in Israel we should alarm the civilian population. And this is all done by an entirely autonomous system. I mean, the decision to shoot an interceptor and shoot down a rocket, men are involved only in the sense that they turn on the system. That's all. All the rest is done autonomously, and more than this, the algorithms that are used by the system, including the interception algorithm, based on machine learning, on the experience that we unfortunately have, until now, where there were tens of thousands of rockets launched in the last 20 years against Israel, and we feed back the system we give the system feedback from what happened, and the algorithms are changing themselves automatically, autonomously, using the machine learning methods that we are all aware of. So when you say autonomous systems should never be used in the battlefield, this is a case in which we use autonomous system for defense, but this example tells you how complicated things can be and how sometimes general observations or general principles cannot hold. We use AI because we don't have any other alternative. 10,000 rockets could have thousands of casualties, and the only way to fight against it is to intercept those rockets in air. And the time that we have because of Israel is not India. Sometimes, as I told you, there are only 30 seconds. Time is too short for human intervention, thinking, etc. Israel is a small country. We have something like 6-7 million Jews. We sit in an area surrounded by something 400 million Arabs, and the ratio is 1 to 60. The only way we can survive until we will be recognized by this neighborhood, the only way we can survive is not by any numeric advantage, but by using technology, science, and of course human talent, which is the base for everything.
So with that, I think we're at the end of our session. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and yeah, time's up.